guys, it's Reagan and welcome to my May wrap up. Now for the month of May, I am pretty pleased with everything I was able to read. I had a super strong start to the month. I was able to complete about 5.5 books. I wanted to read a little bit more because I was on such a roll, but I did leave for a week to go to Scotland, and not gonna lie, great time in Scotland, no regrets, but I barely read a thing except on the airplane, which is where I got the most, if my only reading done for that entire trip. But anyway, without further ado, let's talk about the books I read this month. First book I'm going to talk about is The Stone Sky by N.K. Jemisin. This is the third and final book to the Broken Earth trilogy, and a trilogy I have loved every single second of reading. I feel like this series has definitely taken over my entire booktube channel for the past 3 months since I've been reading it, but I did complete this third novel. This was astounding, incredible, best book in the series, but I would say each book was its own perfect little thing. They all bled so wonderfully into each other as well. The Broken Earth trilogy has fast become one of my all-time favorite fantasy series of all time. I gave this third and final book a 5 out of 5 stars, but if you're looking for a very interesting narrative style, dark, mysterious fantasy novel setting around the concept of the Earth constantly destroying civilization over and over again, and following characters who have very interesting powers trying to maybe save it, maybe destroy it for their own personal reasons. This is definitely an adult fantasy series. It delves on some very adult themes, but it's definitely one of the best written, most interestingly crafted fantasy books I have encountered in a long time. Loved it so very much. There I picked up Wicked Saints by Emily A. Duncan. This is a newer YA fantasy novel that's set in, I would say, like a Russian-inspired historical fantasy setting. It basically follows two kingdoms who have been at war with each other for a century or more due to a philosophical disagreement. Both of these countries once followed the same religion. One country decided to no longer follow that religion and practice a new set of magic and principles centering around blood magic. And the other one still continued to follow it. They've been fighting for power and supremacy over this theological problem for a very long time. We follow a set of characters, some from one side, one from the other side, and they basically kind of have to work together because they're trying to set an end to the war. This is a book I ended up liking but not loving. I felt like it had some great potential. I thought the world was interesting, the setting was cool. The concept of this kind of theologically based magic system was really interesting. Our main character is kind of a monk who can call on all of the gods and grant her power in that moment, which I thought that particularly was really cool and interesting. There's also elements of blood magic, which definitely, just as a trigger warning, cutting is definitely an element to the story and that magic system. But overall, I just felt like everything about the story felt way too rushed. Character development, I just wasn't really connected to anyone, which meant I didn't really buy the friendships or the romance or the separation or the anxiety or anything that had to do with the characters succeeding or failing. I just really couldn't buy into entirely. I also found the plot to be too rushed. I just feel like there were elements to it that just needed way more time to be developed. Ultimately, I would say I was actually pretty disappointed by this book. I was really anticipating it and so excited to read it, but it just really fell pretty short of my expectations, which is unfair to it, but it's the truth. So I ultimately gave this book a 2.75 out of 5 stars. It's good. I definitely would check out more books by this author, maybe her next series, because there's definitely potential there, but overall I felt like this book was just okay. Next book I completed for the month of May was Again But Better by our very own Christine Riccio. I was lucky enough to moderate her New Jersey stop on her book tour, and I read this novel obviously in preparation for that, and I would have otherwise, but I loved it so much. 100% upfront, there is no way I can give an unbiased review of this book. I love Christine. I've known her for years. I was so excited to get a chance to read her published novel. I'm gonna give it a star rating because, again, there's no way I could be unbiased about it, and two, I just can't do it. I can't look at my friend and be like, this is how, I don't know. I only look at it with rainbows and butterflies and just be so excited that it exists. That being said, I really did enjoy this novel a lot. It's a contemporary novel that follows our main character Shane, and she is a very shy, anxious, awkward girl, and she is looking at her upcoming study abroad as a chance to kind of restart her life and her college experience. She's gonna put herself out there, she's gonna make friends, she's gonna talk to boys, it's gonna be a whole new start for her. So we basically follow Shane as she starts her study abroad program in London, and we see her make friends and travel and do all of those things. I really felt like this captured a lot of elements of the college experience really well. I mean, I found Shane to be an incredibly relatable main character. The story is so funny and so cute. I also loved all the travel elements and the study abroadness. I never had the opportunity to study abroad, so I personally always love reading stories that have that component into it, because a part of me just has so much FOMO because I already missed out and it's a regret of mine that I never got the chance to do it. So I just felt like seeing them go to all these different cities and staying at hostels was just such a great time to read. Overall, loved this book. I think it's a great summer contemporary read, so I would definitely recommend checking it out if you're interested. But yeah, read this. Next up, I read Keeper of the Lost Cities Lodestar by Shane Messenger. This is book 5 to the Keeper of the Lost Cities series. And guys, this is my favorite book so far in this series. Every book gets better and better. I love this middle grade series so much. I think in large part has to do with the fact that I love these characters and you get to see them grow up and change and learn and just become, you know, little adults. You see them in the first book at like age 12 and now they're like 16 in this. I don't know. I just want to protect them from the world and everything around them. This is a middle grade fantasy series that involves a huge cast of characters, but our main character is Sophie, who basically discovers she's an elf in the first one, and she has a lot of really interesting magical abilities. She makes friends, she goes to magic school, but she also finds herself at the center of a very big mystery and conspiracy that will like rock the politics of the elven world, and this conspiracy keeps growing and growing with every book. I am fascinated by it. I also just feel like this series is great for so many reasons. I already mentioned the characters, but something else Shane Messenger does so successfully is create so much plot stakes. This might be middle grade, but that doesn't mean everything is hunky-dory and perfect all of the time. The characters have to go through a lot of emotional ups and downs. They have to face a lot of inner demons, outer demons. There's a lot of complex relationships between parents and identity, as well as, to be quite frank, I mean, no one is necessarily safe within this narrative as well. It just makes the story itself so compelling, and I love it so much. I'm obviously going to be picking up the 6th book ASAP. Yeah, but I loved this 5th book so much. 5 out of 5 stars. Again, best book so far in the series. I would highly recommend checking this series out if you like middle grade fantasy at all, or if you don't often read it. I think this is a really great, like, chance to figure out. It's just so good. Next book I have to talk about is The Missing of Clairedelune. Shout out to everyone who told me how to pronounce this title in my reading vlog. You are the real ones. This is the 2nd book to the Mirror Visitor series, and guys, I loved it so much. The Mirror series, the first one being A Winter's Promise, is just incredible and such a breath of fresh air in the YA fantasy world. I am obsessed. I want the 3rd one now. It's already written, so I'm just like waiting for them to release it in America. It's so good. It's just so dang unique. Basically, this is a world where there are different kingdoms that inhabit these different floating spires in the sky. Basically, there was one unknown, unwell documented catastrophe where the world ended, and the spires kind of came from that. First book, we follow our main character Ophelia as she's basically arranged to be married to a man in a very faraway spire that's very different than her home one. Each spire is controlled by a family spirit or a god. Hers is Artemis, and she's moving to another one ruled by the spirit named Farouk, and this new spire is cold and desolate and is ruled by illusions and magic and families constantly vying for power and favor from this family spirit. It's incredibly cutthroat. Our main character Ophelia is very quiet, she's awkward, she's clumsy, but that does not make her not stand up for herself. As a main character, I absolutely love reading about her because you just see her kind of come into her own, but that doesn't mean she goes from quiet to boisterous. She's just more about like honing her own self. In this sequel, we kind of basically see the consequences of a lot of the politics that occurred in the first one and is expanded on even more in the sequel. But more than that, oh my gosh, the world mystery is just cracked open. We learn a lot more about these family spirits, and possibly we get some hints on what was the catastrophe that caused all these spires to even come into existence. I also feel like Christelle Dabos, the author of this book, really combines a lot of different like theological inspirations. Like we have references to Greek and Norse mythology combined with Christianity and all sorts of other things, and it's just absolutely fascinating. The sequel was incredible. I read it in like one fell swoop on the plane. It was amazing. 5 out of 5 stars. Please read this series. The last book I'm going to quickly talk about because it's a bit of a failure on my part because I'm still reading Elantris. I don't know how I haven't finished this book. I guess I haven't been subway commuting very much, but I still have about half of this book left. Definitely gonna read it in June, but same thoughts as last month. I'm loving it a lot. It's a really interesting world where basically there was this once very powerful city where it was inhabited by gods and all the populace around the city like worshipped them. The inhabitants of the city were very powerful. They could basically heal or craft anything by touch. However, one day everyone woke up and the city was transformed from one of like power and hope to a desolate landscape where now people are waking up and they're like cursed. And we follow a variety of main characters in this city of Elantris that has now fallen from grace and a surrounding city and kind of how they're all interworking together. It's really good so far. I'm loving it a lot. I'm going to finish it. It has nothing to do with the book. I just ran out of time. Alrighty guys, those are all of the books I read this May. Let me know down below some books you've read recently as I would love to know, and I'll see you guys soon with another video soon. Goodbye.